that's my meeting house. That's my tupuna whare, that's Tamawhariua, which is the primary marae of Katikati. That's my grandfather. These are my parents, and that's my grandaunt. She was scary. Kia ora. My name is Mabel Parakawa-Burt. I'm the returning officer for Coromandel and for Waiariki. When New Zealanders go to vote in the general election on November 26th, you'll also have your say on the voting system you'd like to elect our parliaments of the future. The purple referendum voting paper asks 2 questions. The first asks whether you want to keep MMP, our current voting system. The second question asks which of 4 other voting systems you would choose if New Zealand decides to change. Some things won't change. Under all 5 systems, there will still be 120 MPs in Parliament, and each system includes Māori electorates.
I'm Nigel Roberts, and this is the New Zealand Parliament. Each of the 5 voting systems in November's referendum gives you different choices. They all work differently, turning your votes into seats here.
I'm Therese Arseneau, and this is the Cabinet Room, the powerhouse of the New Zealand government. Prime Ministers sit right here, joined around the table by Cabinet Ministers. Together, they make important decisions that affect all of us.
Whichever party or parties are in control of this House
become the government and choose the ministers who sit here.
So in November, our choice of voting system affects who gets to sit here
and who gets to sit here. So let's look at the options.
Your first choice in the November referendum is whether or not we keep MMP, the system we use now. Let's look at it first.
In the mixed-member proportional system, you have 2 votes. The first vote is for the party you prefer. It largely decides the total number of seats each party will have in this House.
If 40% of us vote for the Heritage Party, it will get about 40% of all the seats in Parliament.
If 10% of us vote for the Freedom Party, it will get about 10% of the seats.
So who sits in these seats? Your second vote is to choose a person to represent your local electorate in Parliament. Under MMP, New Zealand is divided into 70 electorates. Whoever gets the most votes will become your local electorate MP. They don't have to get more than half to win.
The Heritage Party has won many electorate seats. The rest of its share is filled by MPs from its party list. The Freedom Party hasn't won any electorate MPs, but because it won 10% of the party vote, it's entitled to 10% of all the seats in Parliament. They've come from its party list. To get any seats in Parliament, a party must reach at least 5% of the party vote or win an electorate seat. The Aroha Party won 3% of the party vote, below the 5% threshold, but it won 1 electorate seat and is therefore entitled to its full share of the 120 seats in Parliament, bringing its total to 4 MPs. As its name says, MMP is a proportional system. This means there is likely to be a range of big and small parties in this chamber.
And because small parties are present in Parliament, some could be sitting round this table too. Under the mixed member proportional voting system, governments are usually made up of more than one party, in coalition or with support agreements.
Your second choice in the November referendum is for which of the other 4 voting systems you prefer if New Zealand does decide to change. Remember, you answer this question even if you voted to keep MMP, so it's important to understand your options. Here's a quick run through of each one.
In the first past the post system, New Zealand is divided into 120 electorates.
You have one vote to choose a person to represent your electorate in Parliament. Whoever gets the most votes will become your local MP. They don't have to get more than half to win.
If 10% of New Zealanders support Freedom Party candidates, they're unlikely to win most of the votes in any particular electorate. So the Freedom Party may win no seats at all. Unless a lot of its voters happen to live in one electorate.
On the other hand, larger parties, and especially the winning party, usually win a larger share of the seats in this chamber than their shares of the votes.
This means that one party is likely to win more than half the seats here.
And gets all the seats here, so will be able to govern alone. Coalitions or agreements with other parties are not usually needed. So, under first past the post, it's hard for small parties to win seats, making it easier for one larger party to govern on its own.
In the preferential voting system, New Zealand is divided into 120 electorates. You rank the candidates in the order you prefer them.
To win, a candidate must have the support of more than half the voters.
If no one gets more than half the votes marked 1, then the candidate with the fewest first preference votes is dropped, and their supporter's second choice gets the votes.
This continues until one candidate crosses the 50% line and becomes your electorate MP in Parliament.
If 10% of New Zealanders support Freedom Party candidates, they're unlikely to win most of the votes in any particular electorate. So the Freedom Party may win no seats at all, unless a lot of its voters happen to live in one electorate.
However, even if your most preferred candidate doesn't win, your vote may help to elect your second or third choice.
Larger parties, and especially the winning party, usually win a larger share of the seats in this chamber than their shares of the first preference votes.
This means that one party is likely to win more than half the seats here.
And gets all the seats here, so will be able to govern alone. Coalitions or agreements with other parties are not usually needed. So, under preferential voting, it's hard for small parties to win seats, making it more likely that one larger party will govern on its own.
In the single transferable vote system, New Zealand is divided into about 27 electorates. Depending on how many people live there, each may have between 3 and 7 MPs. Each party can have more than one candidate.
To vote, you choose your most preferred candidate, and if you want, your second, third, fourth choice, as many as you like, from any party as well as independents.
Or instead, you can vote above the line, where you simply choose a party and accept its choice of candidate rankings.
To win, candidates must get a minimum number of votes. This number is called the quota and varies in each electorate depending on how many votes and how many MPs there are.
The Heritage Party's Sue got more votes than she needed to be elected, so her voters' second choices are now in play.
Most of her extra votes go to Alan, also from the Heritage Party, and he too is elected.
There is still one seat to fill, so the lowest polling candidate, the independent, Lee, is eliminated, and those votes go to his voters' second choices.
The Freedom Party's Bob is the last MP to be elected.
When all the winners of the electorate races arrive here, it's likely that the party's shares of the seats will roughly reflect their shares of the votes.
Smaller parties and independents with strong local support can be elected to Parliament.
Because small parties are present in Parliament, some could be sitting around this cabinet table too. Under the single transferable vote system, governments are often made up of more than one party, in coalition or with support agreements.
Under the supplementary member voting system, you have 2 votes. New Zealand is divided into 90 electorates.
The first vote is to choose one person to represent your electorate in Parliament. Whoever gets the most votes will become your local electorate MP. They don't have to get more than half to win. 3/4 of the seats in Parliament are filled this way.
Larger parties, such as the Heritage Party, usually win a larger share of these electorate seats than their shares of the electorate votes. Your second vote chooses the remaining quarter of the members of Parliament and is for the party you prefer.
So if the Heritage Party wins 40% of this party vote, it would get 40% of the 30 list seats in Parliament. That is 12 more. If 10% of New Zealanders support Freedom Party candidates, they're unlikely to win most of the votes in any particular electorate. So the Freedom Party may win no electorate seats at all, unless a lot of its voters happen to live in one electorate.
If the Freedom Party wins 10% of the party vote, it will get 10% of only the 30 list seats in Parliament. It doesn't matter how many electorate seats it's won. This makes SM different from MMP, because under SM, the party vote is completely separate from the electorate vote and only decides 1/4 of the seats in Parliament.
So, small parties are likely to be represented in Parliament, but their total share of the seats here will usually be smaller than their share of the votes. One of the larger parties is likely to win more than half the seats here.
So most of the time under supplementary member, it's likely there will only be one party sitting around this cabinet table. But coalitions or agreements between parties may occasionally be needed.
So, those are our choices. What will happen as a result of the referendum? If at least half of voters decide to keep MMP, the Electoral Commission will independently review to see how it all works. Parliament has decided that several parts of MMP will definitely be looked at, including the 5% or one electorate seat threshold for parties to be eligible for a share of list seats, whether voters should be able to change the order of candidates on a party list, and whether candidates can stand for both an electorate and a party list. The Commission may consider other things too, but not the number of MPs in Parliament or the Māori seats. If more than half of us vote to change the voting system, Parliament will decide if there will be another referendum in 2014 to choose between MMP and the most popular of the other 4 voting systems. So, make sure you have your say.